Selected parts from the book My Life Story, written by Shri KJS Dhillon. Part 8. Army units always celebrate their battle honor days and raising days with great pomp and show. These are the landmark days in a unit's history where the currently serving officers, JCOs, and other ranks rededicate themselves to safeguarding the Naam, Namak, and Nishan, honor, loyalty, and identity of the Paltan. Four Rajputana Rifles celebrates Kiran Day as their Battle Honor Day, which falls on 12 February every year. In view of the scorching summer heat of Rajasthan, the outdoor training with troops is generally conducted during the winter months in deserts. In February 1986, while the unit was training in the deserts, a very solemn ceremony was organized to celebrate Karen Day on the beautiful sand dunes of Rajasthan. In a literal embodiment of the popular phrase, Jungle Mein Mangal, fun in the jungle, the unit invited the legendary Rajasthani folk singer Bungar Khan, who, like many among the Rajputana Rifles troops, was a native of the region, to entertain the troops and bring some joy and relief from the sweat and toil of the training. The impromptu inclusion of Bungar Khan in the schedule of events and his mesmerizing performance, which had earlier enthralled audiences in over 15 countries, became indelible memories for us as we enjoyed his folk music atop the makeshift stage created by collecting the desert sand in a heap and covering it with a fuzzy tarpaulin. Although I have had the opportunity of watching many performances by accomplished artists the world over, Bungar Khan's performance in the desert that evening wins hands down over all of them. An incident similar to the one wherein I got punished for keeping long hair in the NDA occurred again at Udaipur. Captain Iqbal Singh Singha was performing the duties of adjutant, and one evening when he was taking the report of the games fallen, he perceived that I reported late by a few seconds. He thus pronounced the punishment of round the clock guard check, which meant that I would have to check all the guards in the unit every hour throughout the night. Although I was sure that I had reported in time for the games, the adjutant thought otherwise, and his perception could not be questioned. I commenced my punishment and started checking on the guards every hour. Since the entire exercise would take about 45 minutes or so, it implies only a small break of 15 minutes before I had to set off again to start the next hour's checking. Since those days we had manual wound wristwatches, which usually did not show the exact time, as a practice, the unit would run as per the timings of the quarter guard's clock, and the quarter guard NCO would visit the adjutant's office every morning to inform him of the time so that the adjutant could align his watch with the quarter guard's clock. The quarter guard NCO would give out the time by saying, जब मैं कहूँ टाइम तो टाइम होगा 10:03। 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time. When I say time, the time will be 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time. In this way, the adjutant watch would be aligned with the quarter guard's timings to the last second. The next day, when the quarter guard NCO gave the time to Captain Singha, he realized that his watch was ahead by a few minutes and he had wrongly punished me the previous day. However, since the adjutant is always right, there was no way he would apologize to a junior unit member, and I had no option to protest against the punishment meted out by him or to reason why. However, he decided to make amends in a subtle way by inviting my wife and me to his place for dinner that evening. Thus, the unfair punishment I received was more than made up for by the opportunity to partake of the rather sumptuous dinner prepared by Mrs. Baljit Singha. The army is not a profession but a bonding for life, and the everyday experiences that we have during the course of our careers provide a keen insight into the values espoused by the army and the relationships nurtured by army personnel and their families with each other. Life in the unit is a veritable depiction of the extent of mutual faith, or literally blind faith, that people in the army have in each other. For my wife, too, it was a new experience of absolute faith and respect. One incident highlighting this concept of trust occurred soon after our marriage. Like all young brides, my wife too had brought with her some of the gold and jewelry that she had received as part of the wedding rituals. She had a jewelry box full of various rings, bangles, and other trinkets that accompanied her to her first post marriage adobe at Udaipur. After a few months of stay here, Nita had to go back home to appear for her post graduation final exams. She put her gold ornaments in 3 zip pouches and asked me to keep the bags in a safe place before she embarked on the journey. I requested Captain Iqbal Singha to keep the bags in safe custody in the locker in his office, although it is generally not done, but seeing our helpless situation, he agreed. Neither he nor I checked the contents of the pouches, and he just took them from me and placed them in his locker. On Nita's return to the unit, Captain Singha asked me to collect the jewelry bags. I opened the locker and extracted the pouches, but as became evident later, I took out only two pouches and inadvertently left the third one inside the locker only, for it must have been pushed to the back, thus evading my gaze. My wife too did not miss the third pouch, as she herself had not counted the trinkets and was not sure of the full inventory of either the jewelry items or the number of bags before asking me to deposit them in safe custody. This oversight on our part came to light 3 months later when Captain Singha was going on leave and had to hand over charge of his locker to another officer. During the process of handing over and taking over, as they were checking the files in the locker, suddenly they came across my wife's jewelry pouch. Captain Singha called me, telling me that I had forgotten something in his locker. I checked with my wife, who said that she could not remember missing anything. Captain Singha then invited us to his home for dinner and promised to show us what we had forgotten to collect from his locker, leaving us in a quandary as we still could not figure out what was missing from our jewelry collection. It was only when Nita saw the pouch that she realized that the gold in it was indeed hers, and she had not checked her inventory for the entire 3 months. This incident clearly shows the faith that army personnel repose in each other, never doubting each other's loyalties or bona fide intentions, and always pitching in to offer support and assistance to colleagues and friends, even if it entails the safekeeping of expensive and prized personal possessions. Another distinct characteristic of life in uniform is the burden of responsibility as an officer and ensuring that the orders of the commanding officer are obeyed to the hilt, irrespective of whether one is individually a beneficiary of the same or not. In those days, hardly one or two officers in a unit owned a car, and most of the officers traveled on two wheelers, including a few bicycles. Thus, in order to facilitate the travel of the wives and families of the officers and jawans to the hospital or railway station, for instance, certain military vehicles would be modified with cushioned seats covered with blankets and sheer curtains and would be referred to as officers' one ton or Jawan bus. When Nita was scheduled to go home for her exams, the commanding officer, Colonel Tribnesh Mukherjee, told me that the officers one ton should drop her to the railway station. He also told me to ensure that the vehicle was in good condition. When Nita was slated to leave for the railway station in the evening, the commanding officer and other unit officers and ladies dropped in to say goodbye. The CO was ostensibly not very happy with the condition of the blankets in the vehicle and told me to see him in his office after dropping my wife at the railway station. When I reached the CO's office, he asked me in a fit of temper, why the hell was a suitable vehicle not provided to the lady traveling to the railway station? I told him, sir, since Nita was traveling in it, I thought it was okay to use the old blankets. This infuriated him further, and then I learned the biggest lesson of my life when he roared. As an officer, it is not important. In fact, it should never be in your mind as to who the beneficiary of your actions or orders is. An officer's actions are always based on absolute prudence, and today you failed in your duty as an officer to provide a respectable vehicle to a unit lady traveling to the railway station. You have compromised on the standards of the unit and the respect that we have for our ladies. Suitably chastened, I learned from this one statement of my CO that all my actions as an army officer should always be above board and aimed at protecting the best interests of all whom I am responsible for, my Jawans and my nation. Another similar incident occurred when we were on our way to Kashmir. I had already reached Kashmir and my wife was scheduled to join me from Punjab and was booked on a flight from Amritsar, which was getting repeatedly delayed or cancelled because of a terrorist threat at Amritsar airport. Since Amritsar was an intermediate location for her, she was staying with a unit officer posted there, Lieutenant Colonel Khajan Singh Dalal. Lieutenant Colonel Dalal was not posted in the unit when we got married, and hence neither my wife nor I had ever met him or his wife before. Hence, again, I would like to clarify that I have many relatives in Amritsar, but the choice of staying with an unknown unit officer was the only option considered and exercised. Lieutenant Colonel Dalal would escort my wife to the airport every day, where they would be told that the flight had been cancelled because of some impending threat. It was on the third day of their visit to the airport that they were told that the flight had finally arrived and was ready for departure. In her hurry to board the flight, my wife forgot her purse in the waiting lounge of Amritsar airport. Interestingly, this purse contained the same pouch of gold that had been forgotten in Captain Singha's locker. On reaching Srinagar, she boarded an army vehicle that transported her to our unit in Kupwara in North Kashmir. It was only on reaching Kupwara that she realized her purse was missing but could not recall where she had left it, in the aircraft or at the airport or perhaps even at Colonel Dalal's residence. Prudentially, since the purse had been forgotten at the airport, as we learned later, in view of the prevalence of terrorism in Punjab, no one touched that purse, fearing it to have been a camouflage bomb left by a terrorist. Hence, the airport authorities summoned a bomb squad to inspect the purse, and when it was opened, much to their amazement, the bomb disposal force found no incendiary device in it but a collection of gold jewelry. Since my wife's identity card was also in the purse, the security officer there, who happened to be a colleague of her father's, immediately realized whose purse it was, and thereafter she was traced. We received a telegram within 2 days informing us that Nita's purse had been found at Amritsar airport, asking us to identify the items in it and then claim it after suitable verification. According to her, the prospective list would include two bangles, three pairs of earrings, and two rings. My head clerk in the unit, Subedar Hardev Singh, typed the letter detailing this list, which was to be shared with the Amritsar airport authorities. However, before sending the list, the head clerk, also a soldier and an old hand who definitely had much more experience of married life than me, advised me to get the list rechecked by my wife, as wives tend to overlook or deliberately tend to underplay the loss, especially when the loss is due to their own oversight. And sure enough, when I asked Nita to reconfirm the items mentioned in the list based on her first account, she added a few more items to the list. The head clerk persisted and asked me to get it checked yet again. Incredibly, I sent that letter to her 4 times, and each time some amendment or addition was made in the list. Ultimately, the letter was dispatched from our end, and I requested one of my cousins stationed at Amritsar to collect the purse from the airport after producing the list of its contents. And believe it or not, when he claimed the purse and opened it, he found some additional items in it that had still been missed out from the list despite its amendment a number of times. What an unforgettable history that particular trinket bag acquired. Here again, another very important military lesson. Whatever is not checked is not done was learned early in life without having to go through a more stringent military way of learning. Even more intriguing than the sequence of events leading to the recovery of the purse was the wisdom and confidence of the head clerk, who proved to be so right when he urged me to get the list rechecked and revised a number of times. I later found out that the JCOs and NCOs in the army are a veritable treasure chest of information and experience and keep imparting all their learning to officers during such key occasions, what is popularly known as hands on experience or on the job learning. These two incidents indicate that even though the officers in the army and their families may at times be remiss or exhibit carelessness, the system in the army can help overcome such challenges and ensure complete safety and security of both individuals and property. The security of army life that I have referred to is also applicable for the home and hearth of a soldier. It may sound incredulous, but it is a fact that army personnel never lock their homes even when they go on long leave. The whole house is left open and under the care of the watch and ward staff without any risk or possibility of an untoward incident. This faith and mutual trust among army personnel, manifested in all aspects of their lives, is thus a remarkable trait and, in fact, the hallmark of the Indian Army. The motto behind this reality is we trust you with our very life. So, trust in terms of protecting our property and physical possessions is a very small part of the overall faith we have in the army. Apart from the concept of trust, discipline too is an absolute non negotiable concept in the army. The following incident underscores how actual or perceived indiscipline by any army officer has inevitable repercussions. Mess, as against the dictionary meaning, is a well laid out institution in all the military units where Bachelor or forced bachelor, that is, married officers staying single, dine. This is also the place where all the official and personal social functions are organized. For smooth running of the officers' mess in a unit, a mess committee is constituted from within the available officers who are assigned different duties such as food member, property member, or garden member, etc., with the second in command of the unit being ex officio president of the mess committee, popularly called the PMC. There are regular mess meetings held to take stock of various aspects concerning the unit officer's mess, including its smooth functioning. This somewhat interesting meeting took place in the summer of 1986 when our unit had just come to Udaipur a few months ago, the renowned lake of city from its previous location in the high altitude of Sikkim. The commanding officer was Colonel Trignesh Mukherjee and Subisar was the second in command. One of the biggest attractions of Udaipur, apart from its natural endowments, was that it epitomized the promise of good food and inevitably enticement for young bachelors like me. I must clarify here that 4 Rajputan rifles in those days was blessed with a posse of about a dozen bachelors, ably led by Elisar, the stylish young major who, I dare say, still proudly flaunts his youthful style. Our unit also had a fleet of bullets or Royal Enfield motorbikes, though Eli Sir preferred to zoom around on his trusted old scooter. Since Zomato and Swiggy did not exist then, the bachelors would invariably disappear in the evenings, returning rather late for dinner, especially towards the second half of the month, purely for financial reasons. These truant evenings and erratic and staggered arrival timings of bachelors to the mess would result in the mess staff being kept awake late in the night. When the young officers made their late evening entry into the mess, amidst shouts of "Koi hai? Anyone there?" their query would be followed by eerie silence, with the staff having left for good after waiting endlessly for the missing bachelors. Eventually, the issue reached the second in command, Subi sir. Sometime thereafter, we had a famous mess meeting wherein, as per tradition, the second in charge started mentioning various significant matters, initially in his typical Lucknowi or Allahabadi andaz, full of niceties and polished mannerisms. But his tone progressively became stern, and finally he came to the contentious issue, stating, "Master, his way of addressing us when he was displeased, without undermining his otherwise extremely affectionate attitude. I have been informed of a matter concerning the bachelors who invariably come in very late for dinner and mess staff has to keep waiting for them." He would have gone on, but suddenly something unprecedented occurred. Much to everyone's astonishment, Shorty Ghura, a young Turk who had less than 5 years of service, interrupted the second in command's speech, saying, "Sorry, sir, but that was my point. When we come in late to the mess, we don't find the mess staff waiting." There was pin drop silence for a moment, and then, as if a dam had been let loose, the commanding officer, Colonel Mukherjee, thundered, "You bloody chops!" The next words are unprintable. Suffice it to say that The mess staff's complaint was given priority over shortest protestation, and all of us were told in no uncertain terms to remain within the limits of discipline and inform the mess staff well in advance whenever we would be late for our meals and to strictly adhere to the anticipated time of our arrival. Thanks for listening. The impromptu inclusion of Bungar Khan in the schedule of events and his mesmerizing performance, which had earlier enthralled audiences in over 15 countries, became indelible memories for us as we enjoyed his folk music atop the makeshift stage created by collecting the desert sand in a heap and covering it with a fuzzy tarpaulin. Impromptue impromptu means done or said without earlier preparation or planning. The army is not a profession but a bonding for life, and the everyday experiences that we have during the course of our careers provide a keen insight into the values espoused by the army. Espouse means support a cause or belief or way of life. These truant evenings and erratic and staggering arrival timings of bachelors to the mess would result in the mess staff being kept awake late in the night. Truant means a child who stays away from school without permission. In this case, a army jawan. Thanks for listening.